Okay, so we are here at Arnold Ventures headquarters. It is in this Amagi Bank building in Houston, and you know, they have one of the floors, I think maybe the 18th floor up there, and you know, it's just curious to look up Amagi Bank. It was bought out in 2005 by Zions Bank Corporation, and Zions Bank goes all the way back to the 1870s in Brigham Young. So it's interesting because there is quite a bit of interest in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in human capital investing, and a lot of money tied up in sort of these early childhood social impact bonds, as well as a lot of technology, biotechnology, surveillance technology, and other things. So interesting context here. I do want to, before we get a little too far, I want to mention Arnold Ventures was an investor in the KIPP Knowledge is Power Charter School franchise. And I forgot to say earlier that Dave Levin and Michael Feinberg, the reason that the sort of the flagship campus is there in Houston is because they were 5th grade teachers for Teach for America in Houston, and I think that's how they met. So that is why that particular location above all other KIPP charter schools is important. And the other piece that I forgot to mention is within the human capital impact space, Texas is a leader in is setting up math social impact bonds. The TEA has hired a math innovation officer to sort of do market preparation for these math impact bonds. And there are many, many children in the state of Texas, which makes them quite an attractive market for these human capital bond markets, especially Black and brown children. So that is important context that I forgot to mention earlier on. When I got into my advocacy work, my focus was really around saving public schools. And as I've gotten deeper into understanding that the educational technology is really about data surveillance towards collecting information to train AI systems, and understanding that the end goal is to actually eliminate all bricks and mortar schools in favor of sort of a digital wallet with a digital voucher and some sort of Pokemon Go type of learning on the go through consuming online information and collecting badges and skill points in your community, in your augmented reality community that's going to be tied in with Niantic and the Knight Foundation. That my focus has expanded beyond simply the public school versus charter school language construct, in that every child, particularly vulnerable children, are considered human capital data assets for this machine, and that the AI is going to be coming after all the children, whether they're in public school, private school, parochial school, charter schools, homeschool, unschooling. Really all of the children are going to be targets in the system, and that the targets in conservative areas are going to be through these digital vouchers. So this is all really important, but the charter school franchises like KIPP they help pave the way to be test beds of the technology, to disrupt the public systems, to enable them to be taken out entirely in favor of the learning ecosystem model that is advanced by knowledge works, and that all of these children will be independent actors in the hedge fund game as they have digital vouchers that are weighted and tied to their own student outcomes. So it allows that ongoing data surveillance. So these are all just important things I forgot to say over at the KIPP Charter franchise. But there is synergy here because the Arnold Ventures Fund, which is located in this building, is an investor in the KIPP Charter franchise. Who is John Arnold? John and Laura Arnold, his wife. She was an executive in the oil industry and a lawyer, and he was a trader in energy futures here in Houston. They're based here in Houston. In 2007, he became one of the youngest billionaires. So going back to John Arnold, John and Laura Arnold live here in Houston. Laura is a former oil executive and lawyer. John started his career with Enron in energy futures trading. And in the early 1990s, the company was one of the first to really take advantage of the internet for their trading systems. And they were trading in derivatives in energy. And John was called sort of the king of natural gas. And then eventually Enron imploded, not before he took out like quite a nice bonus package before the company all fell apart. And he moved on and created his own hedge fund to trade in futures markets. And the name of his company was called Centaurus, which is interesting because we've talked previously about centaurs being sort of the human-machine hybrid and the nicer name they're interested in using other than cyborg, that the DARPA and Amy Cruz is interested in looking at human-machine interfaces as centaurs. So that was the name of his energy trading company. And again, once we understand, I think, the history of big oil in energy futures, that the new energy futures is going to be in the energy produced by beings, not just human beings, but other living beings on the planet that become colonized by nanoelectronics and harvested for data and energetic systems. Within the broader context of both educational technology and public health and COVID, at this point, as we're talking about energy futures and big oil in Houston, which, you know, that is the Houston context, is big oil and the transition now to alternative energy. It's really vital that we understand the role of the Rockefeller Foundation, going back early to Rockefeller's father, who was a snake oil salesman, right? And then the advancement of Standard Oil in geopolitics and reshaping policies to serve its financial interests, including public health. So as we can see all the way through line, the Rockefeller Foundation has been central in developing the human capital markets, in financializing nature, and controlling the biosurveillance state that is now rolling out under the COVID lockdown. So the oil futures markets and big oil's hands in all aspects of our lives are really central in understanding the role of John and Laurel Arnold and Arnold Ventures. The oil and natural gas industry is very central around pipelines. And in the human capital space and in the education space, education and health outcome space, we're looking at pipelines as well, pipelines of human capital. In the management of children, that is called cradle to career, or possibly even eventually cradle to cradle management, cybernetic management of human lives. That human capital investing space is being advanced nationally through an organization called Strive Together. Strive Together does cradle to career pathways, especially for vulnerable communities. They're looking at everything from home visits to early childhood education, to early literacy, to college attainment, to reskilling. And each of those is a human capital impact opportunity. It is carried out in many communities through the United Way and the chambers of commerce, because all of education then becomes aligned to planned regional economies. And that goes under the name of collective impact. So you're seeing a lot of big collective venture capital firms going in on this, Blue Meridian among them, that are active in Texas and that are going to be picking up in this space pretty soon, around math impact bonds, around early literacy bonds, around home visit bonds, around health outcomes bonds. These are all going to be woven in. There isn't a Strive Together here in Houston, but there is in Austin, and it's called the E3 Alliance. The cybernetic management of people through pathways, continuum of care pathways and educational pathways, is definitely linked to this carbon credit trading system. And I spoke about this in an online presentation I did in early March of 2020, where I likened the idea of outcomes-based government contracts to the cap and trade system that was innovated in the oil and gas industry. In the space that is coming up around outcomes-based government contracting, pay for success, social impact bonds, and cybernetic management of individuals and populations, it is all about data analytics. How you track someone along the pipeline, how you track them along the continuum of care, how you track their compliance. And that is why KIP is such a foundational element of this, because it is a behaviorist and is being directly attached to behavioral economics, this behavioral economic system of digital nudges and guidance into people living out lives according to something else that is planned outside of them, to where they will fit in a post-human world and a post-big oil economy. So we have the sense of carbon trading, behavioral economics, human capital pipelines, and global finance, and then eventually the sensor and wearable technology sectors. And KIP is aligning all of these children into this pathway. Now in the future, the plan is going to be actually, in my opinion, the goal will be to KIP the world, to use the knowledge's power, work hard, be nice under technological surveillance, not just to children in K-12, but for everyone in global charter cities. And charter cities are areas that are states of exception that are advanced by Paul Romer at NYU. And the idea is to carve out existing areas of cities of existing governments and put in place of that a corporate governance layer where people can be experimented on for data analytics and impact markets. So I think the plan is to KIP the world, and the finance and tech and big pharma and defense sectors are all in on this game. So it's important to know that John Arnold, I believe he signed up for the Giving Pledge, and that he is advancing something called Arnold Ventures. Arnold Ventures is pretty much into every social cause. Their focus is sort of, I guess, data-driven justice, that their intent is that they will solve all of the world's problems on data dashboards, on data analytics dashboards. And of course, that would be the mindset of someone who is a energy futures trader, someone who is trading on the internet with high frequency trading in derivatives, because we know the plan is to securitize all of these debt markets that will be meant to ostensibly help people, but not really help. It's never going to solve the problem. Some of the areas that they are focused on are early childhood, K-12 education, higher education, prison reform, climate justice, addiction treatment. But all of these programs are going to be linked into digital surveillance of targeted populations. And once caught in the web of these social impact interventions, people will never be able to escape, because if we create global markets in poverty management that are profitable, then the plan will be to grow poverty, to grow managed poverty, and that is what Arnold Ventures is about. Within this, they were working on supporting the Beek Center, B-E-C-K, at Georgetown. Georgetown is central to advancing data analytics and social policy interventions under the guise of social justice that are anything but. And so Arnold Ventures is a key supporter of the Beek Center, and Sonal Shah, who is working in a connection with the Obama administration, helped founded that. And then Arnold Ventures later was a supporter of the celebration around the passage of the Social Impact Partnerships Pay for Results Act, which is called CIPRA, which was seed money for all of these early pay for success finance programs. So again, that sort of knits together our human capital futures, energy, carbon credit management, for profit on data dashboards by those who are interested in trading in futures markets, derivatives markets, through these technologies. That is what knits together the KIP charter franchise with Arnold Ventures, is the idea that we will transform injustices, achievement gaps, economic gaps, opportunity gaps, and then we will turn that into data on dashboards, and we will predictively profile all of those who need public services. We will privatize them for global investors. We will track everything on a dashboard for cybernetic purposes, for technocracy purposes, looking at energy inputs and outputs, all of it on blockchain, and it will serve to further enrich the global elite. Because if you have poverty that makes a profit, the market says, the market logic is that you will never eliminate the source of your profit. You will only grow managed poverty. And that is what brings together Arnold Ventures and the KIP Charter franchise, one of their investments.